Okay, boys and girls, I'm back with another video. This is about Ruth in the Green Book discussion questions today. So I gave you a video read aloud. You should definitely listen to the book again. Just to give you some background, Ruth in the Green Book is a fictional story, but it's based off of things that actually happened in the past. It's about Ruth and her family. They're African American. They live in Chicago in the 1950s. And in the 1950s, in the United States, life in some places was segregated, meaning that white people and black people lived in separate lives. They couldn't go to the same movie theaters or the same bathrooms or the same restaurants. And if they did, they would have sections where black people could go and where white people could go. Now, in the North, like Chicago or like New York City or Philadelphia, you didn't see this as much. And Ruth's family is from Chicago, but they're on this trip to go to Alabama to visit their grandma. Now, as they're traveling, they're experiencing, or at least Ruth is for the first time, uh, segregation. They're experiencing discrimination. They stop at a gas station. The gas attendant would not let them use their bathroom because they were black. And they're forced to go to the bathroom in the woods, which is quite embarrassing and quite traumatic. And the mother even says, they should be the ones that should be embarrassed, not us. So as you get along to the story, and I'm going to show you the story here. Let's go back a little bit. This is on page 7 of the story. It says, when we crossed into Tennessee, Daddy said his friend Eddie lived close by. He was sure he could sleep there. Eddie was so happy to see us. He gave me a big hug and told me that he knew me when I was real little. His wife Alice cooked us a warm meal and I ate too much. Daddy and Eddie used to play music in a band before they went off and fought in the war. They talked about how they traveled a lot back then and how they always had a hard time finding places to rest and eat. Daddy shook his head and said he had hoped that the war had changed things, but now he could see he was wrong. So that section will help you answer this question. But it's not obvious what war they fought in, so I'm going to really help you with this part. Since this was in the 1950s, more than likely, Eddie and Ruth's father, they're either in their maybe 40s or late 30s. So more than likely, they fought in World War II, which took place in the 1940s. Now, I know that based off the fact that the setting took place in the 1950s and the war that just ended, World War II, ended in 1945. So that part I'll give you. So the answer to that part is World War II. Now, why did Ruth's father think that the war would have changed things? Well, to give you some background about that, African Americans did fight in World War II, and they helped defeat Germany and Japan. And things were segregated in the 1940s also. But after the United States won the war, many black people thought that, hey, we proved ourselves. We helped fight in the war. We dedicate our lives to our country, especially people who were soldiers or participated in the war effort. Because World War II, everybody helped out in some way. If you weren't fighting in the war, you were working in the factories, you were making ammunitions or food for the soldiers overseas. So after the war ended and some of the soldiers came back home, things were still separated. So if you were from Tennessee and you fought in World War II and you were a black soldier, and you went to Germany and you fought against Nazi Germany, you helped defeat the Germans, you helped the Americans win the war. When you came back home, life was still segregated. You were still treated as a second-class citizen. You weren't given the same rights. So Ruth's father and Eddie thought things might have changed because they said, hey, we gave our lives for America. We gave our lives for this country. Why aren't we getting the same rights as everybody else? And what did he expect would have changed? Well, think about what the story's about. It's also showing you what life was like in the South for many African Americans. They thought that they would have a chance to have equal rights, for things to be fair and equal. but they weren't. So definitely take that into consideration when you give a response. For number 6, why do you think people at SO service stations were nice to Ruth's family? So let's go back to the story here. And I think it's on this page here. Let me just get here. It says, in the car, I asked Daddy who Jim Crow was. And he explained that Jim Crow wasn't a who, it was a bunch of ugly laws forbidding blacks and whites from mixing in any way. I asked, why don't they want our business? Wasn't our money just the same? It hurt my feelings to be so unwelcome. But Mama sighed and reminded me that my job that day was to look for an SO station. So then they talked more about that. The next day, as we loaded the car, I heard Eddie talking quietly to Mama and Daddy. Eddie warned them about what was ahead. Someone called Jim Crow. I heard Eddie tell them that however bad it was so far, it was only going to get worse for us, maybe even dangerous. So this part you read first, but I'm going back in time a little bit. Maybe even dangerous as we went further south. Then Eddie saw me listening, and he picked me up and told me not to worry. He said that I should look out for SO service stations along the road because the people there would be nice to us. And then that's when Ruth asked about who Jim Crow was, and Dad explained a little bit that they were a set of laws, not a person. And Mom says, look out for the SO station. And Mom wanted to keep Ruth kind of focused. You can see the look on her face. She looks sad because she's experiencing what life was like in the South for the first time, and this was not what life was like in Chicago. Remember, this is the 1950s, so we're talking about almost 70 years ago. Now, when they get to the station on the next page, let's go here. So now Ruth is telling the story, by the way. You notice it says I spotted an SO station, so pay attention to that. I spotted an SO station near the Georgia border and sang out to Daddy to stop. Daddy filled the car up and asked the man if he knew where he could sleep for the night. The man showed us a pamphlet called The Negro Motorist Green Book. He explained this book was started by a postman, Mr. Victor M. Green, to help black people who were traveling. It lists places in lots of states where we would be welcome to sleep, eat, shop, get a haircut, and all kinds of other information besides. And all kinds of other information besides. Right away, Daddy bought our very own copy for 75 cents. Now, the SO station, if you go back to the question here, the SO stations were there to help black families that were traveling in the South because, as I told you, some places did not provide business for black families or black travelers because they had Jim Crow laws. They didn't serve to black families, and no matter how much money you had. So at the SO service station, it was almost like a safe place to go. And when you went there, they would sell you a pamphlet, a book called the Green Book. It's called the Green Book because it's named after the man Victor M. Green, who was a postman. And what he did was he collected a list of safe places where black people could go to go to eat, to go to sleep, for like hotels, gas stations, to get haircuts, things like that, so that they wouldn't face discrimination. So that's why the people were so nice to Ruth's family. But as you read that section, you can see that. So play this video as often as you like. Reach out to me if you have questions. And remember, give details here, 3 to 4 sentences each. You can use this video to help you, but definitely listen to the story again. And we'll talk more about the story later on. All right? All right, boys and girls. Take care now. Bye.